Hi everyone, I want to thank you for coming. My name is Timeco and I would like to introduce the activists that helped me put this together. Brother Donald Dominic, Ms. D. Wooding, I should say, Mike Motley, Tony G, and Dwayne Arrington. They all helped me put this together. My videographer, Anthony Martin, also, and a few other people that are not here, Mr. Carlos Bruford and Sabrina Jordan. So I'd like to give thanks to them, and also to Wesley Center for allowing us to hold the event here today. Thank you to Wesley Center. So without further ado, I'm just going to give a few simple instructions, and then we'll just get right into it. I'd like this also to be an informal gathering of a dialogue of the candidates and the issues, and why should we vote for you, or why should I vote for you. And just a few simple instructions. The candidates and the speakers, which I don't see any speakers yet, will have 1 to 3 minutes to introduce themselves and explain their platform and why we should vote for them. And then the audience will ask questions, 1 minute or less each, and then the candidates will answer those questions one by one. And at the end of that, if there's any time, we'll either do a one-on-one engagement with the voters and the candidates and the speakers if any show up, or we'll do second questions with the audience.
My name is Alonzo Edmonds. I'm here on behalf of candidate Carl Keith. He's running for Montgomery County Auditor. Carl has 17 years of experience as a county auditor in Montgomery County. Many awards that he's earned include being the former president of the Ohio State Auditors Association. Recently, he received the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Ohio Government Finance Officers Association. Why should you vote for Carl Keith? You know, it's a vote for experience. Certainly, Carl does have an opponent, but that opponent doesn't have the same experience as Carl Keith. And when you look at this neighborhood, West Dayton, Residence Park, Westwood, what Carl Keith offers to all of us as voters and people who are from this community is an opportunity to address property values. The auditor wears many hats here in Montgomery County, whether it's from weights and measures. When you go to the gas tank, you see that little sticker on the gas tank that says Carl Keith. That's part of one of his duties, but I think of all the roles that he fulfills, the role of setting values for properties is the role that touches us first and foremost. More importantly, his office has received many awards for creating an open environment for people to come and discuss issues of property value. And I think that's the main touch point when you're talking about how we can use our vote to help create an opportunity of consistency. And Mr. Keith has represented that year in and year out. I'm an employee in his office, and you know, having worked with Mr. Keith for so many years and seen him speak publicly, seen him deal with folks, as well as different issues that affect our community. Most recently, skimmers. I don't know if you all are familiar with this, but the technology now in the world is available to where you can set up a device inside a pump station where you pump your gas and steal data regarding from people's credit cards. Carl is leading the way in protecting consumers and local businesses from the gas pump skimmers in that role as county auditor, chief of weights and measures in Montgomery County. Every vote is important. And if you're going to make your vote count, it's important to vote for experience. And that's what Carl Keith represents. Thank you.
My name is Helen Wallace. I'm running for Montgomery County Juvenile Court Judge. Why you should vote for me? Well, I've got 17 years experience in juvenile court. I've held every single role an attorney can hold in juvenile court. I started there as a prosecutor in the delinquency section, and then as a prosecutor I moved to grand jury, to an adult felony docket, and went to Care House. Care House, for those of you that don't know, is for children who have been victims of an alleged crime, a felony by an adult. While I was at Care House, I had my second child, my daughter Kate. I have 2 children. I transitioned to private practice after I had my daughter. That was because my son Charlie had some learning differences. My son Charlie is dyslexic. Through that experience of mothering my son, I've learned that 15 to 20% of the population is dyslexic. I have noticed and observed that in juvenile detention, a lot of the children that we lock up are smart kids who just have learning differences. if they were engaged in school, they would not be getting into trouble. The reason I am running is to make the changes that we need in our system so that we stop locking up kids and we start using their potential to contribute to society. People often don't know, and I didn't know, but Albert Einstein, Thomas Edison, Leonardo da Vinci, Richard Branson, Charles Schwab, so many wonderful innovators and entrepreneurs and movers and shakers have been dyslexic. There's nothing wrong with their brains. Their brains are different, but they're not less than. We have so many kids, so many people locked up that could be positively contributing to society. I feel passionately about it, and that's why I'm running. You should vote for me because I truly care. I'm not a politician. I've never run for another office in my entire life. Never thought I would. But I saw an opportunity to make a much needed positive change in our community, and I took it.
Good evening. I'm Heath McAlpine. I'm the campaign manager for Carolyn Rice, your county treasurer. Carolyn is currently running for Montgomery County Commissioner. She has spent her whole life preparing for this position. She was born and raised here in the Miami Valley. In fact, she was born at Good Samaritan Hospital. She went to Miami University and got a degree in education. And her first job out of college was teaching special needs kids in an elementary school. She raised a family, and then as she was raising the family, she decided to go back to school and earned an MBA at Wright State University. Followed up with private sector jobs in companies across the region, including Reynolds and Reynolds, and other companies, LexisNexis as well. She went back to Wright State, this time as the director of their adult education program, and was quite successful there. 11 years ago, she had the chance to step up and become your county treasurer, and she's been very successful in doing that over the years. She's been elected now 3 times, and each time that she's been elected, she's outpolled the presidential candidate in the year when she's been running in that particular election. She's particularly, though, proud of a couple of initiatives in her office that have really touched kind of the heart and soul needs of our community. The first was the foreclosure mediation program. When we slid into the Great Recession and so many people were losing their homes in the Miami Valley, in Montgomery County, in Dayton, Carolyn stepped up and funded the foreclosure mediation project. She used monies available to her to put people in place to work with people who were on the verge of losing their homes and their mortgage companies to see if a solution could be worked out. She couldn't win that battle every time, but she won it a lot of times. There are some 1,250 families who went through that program who successfully maintained their homes, who were able to stay in their homes because of that. On top of that, she advocated for the establishment of the land bank system here in Montgomery County. The land bank acquires dilapidated, rundown properties, blighted homes in our neighborhoods, and businesses sometimes, commercial property, and tries to reposition them either for redevelopment, renovation, or for demolition, clearing that lot up so that people can have a decent place to live. She fought for that law when it was first established here in Ohio. She fought for bringing that to Montgomery County and leading the effort here, and she's been successful in attracting some $26 million in funding to do that. It's made it an important difference across our community, but particularly recently it's been focused over in the Pineview neighborhood, where a home was acquired, renovated. I went to it and I thought it was a grand looking place when they were done, and it's already been resold. And the glory of that in repositioning that property is now that real estate agents, if you know anything about real estate agents, they love to have comparables. They love to go into a neighborhood and see what things have been selling for. This home went for a good price, and it's going to help drive up prices in the rest of that neighborhood and drive further development, as will additional projects that the land bank is launching in the Pineview neighborhood. Voting ends on November 6th. It's already begun for early voting. This election cycle can be a great one for the community.
Well, I'm Judge Eric Blaine. I am one of your Montgomery County Common Pleas Court judges, and while I'm here today, just to ask for your vote because I want to continue serving you. You know, coming out into communities to be part of your community and to be a voice for you is something I've done my entire career. My family escaped from communist Czechoslovakia in 1964. They fled a country that was closed, inept, and corrupt, and a system where, because they were Slovak, the preference was for Czechs, and they felt that. and the second time everything was taken from them, they came here. That story anchors what I do every single day. Their 6 months in a camp in Italy before they came here anchors it, because the freedoms that we enjoy, that we get to enjoy every day, from speech to voting, are absolutely integral to the Common Pleas Court as well. You know, when I take the bench, I made 2 promises. First, that I'd carry a copy of the Constitution with me, and the second, carry a copy of my family. And those 2 things sit on the bench every single day. And now, since then, well, I've been working to make sure that every day our system of justice is open, and people know what's going on and know what to expect, and that it's fair, because there is no politics on the bench, nor should there ever be. And ultimately, that it's proven. You know, for 4 years in a row, I was named a Super Lawyer Rising Star by all the attorneys in Ohio, a number about 2% of attorneys ever get, but well before I even thought about becoming judge, and well before I was asked to become judge. My career has been one of service. I love coming to the community, whether it's working with Wheels for Heroes or Wheels for Vets, 5 years in ex-offender reentry, to make sure that when people see me for the bad things, they see me for the good, to move forward with their lives, to move into employment opportunities, to remove the stigmas of conviction and of incarceration. And how do we do that? We do that by having an honest conversation about what's going on, and making sure that when they do, they know their options. People are aware of it. Because if we continue to live in darkness, or force people to live in darkness, where are they going to stay? In darkness. So we continue to shine light, continue to work forward for them, and keep moving forward. You know, this day has been one that's been very interesting, and we were describing this earlier. You know, I started at the Artemis End Domestic Violence breakfast. From that, I went and had several hearings and conferences at court. From there, went over and I was with the organization that helps promote conversations between the bench and the bar and lawyers and the media. Immediately from that, went over to the Veterans Moving Forward events to help plan for the next veterans events, to make sure that people are serving our community. But you know what? This service is great. It keeps me busy. It keeps the ideas flowing and opportunities helping for so many. But at the same time, when we take off the rope and the evenings, we want to come into the communities. A year ago in Trotwood Lost Power, we were out there in, well, polo shirts, t-shirts, and shorts, delivering water in the middle of the evening because, well, people needed it, delivering ice to keep food cold. Service doesn't start when you take the bench. It doesn't start when you want something. Service starts well before it ever is even a thought. That's a lesson that I learned from the first man that ever offered me a job in the legal system, and that's Judge Rice. He set in my mind what I thought a judge ought to be like and how I ought to act every single day as a lawyer and now as judge. Why you should vote for me? Well, frankly, my experience is I've been on both sides of the aisle. I've been a prosecutor, a defense attorney, corporate counsel, and plaintiff's lawyer. I've represented companies to keep them responsible, and I've represented people when companies put profits over people. And that should never happen. That's why I do it. That experience has led me into every area of law that I'm in charge of now. Every aspect of it, I know both sides, and ultimately, you know, when you look at this, and you look and see the experience level, the knowledge, and the proven track record, since I've become judge, every single one of my decisions has been affirmed by the Court of Appeals. I've not been reversed. The justice system works because people are open. The justice system works when people know about it. And the justice system works when people get it right. And that's why I want to continue serving as your judge, to continue coming to community to help you and to hear about what's going on so we can make this a better place to be, not a better place to be from. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeff Rezebeck. I'm your Montgomery County Juvenile Court Judge. I've had that position since July, but I want to give a little bit of history. I've been attorney here in Montgomery County for over 20 years, working mainly in juvenile court. Many people used to joke that I always had an office already in the building because I was there so much, really doing a lot of the work as guardian ad litem and representing many of the children of our community. I then had the opportunity, after having that successful practice, to run. I became the state representative of the 43rd District, which basically includes Harrison Township, Trotwood, heading out to western Montgomery County, including Preble County. I had that opportunity, and while I was at the State House, I continued to work for many of the things that we did in the community, is really trying to focus in on juvenile court, and the juvenile laws and try and make them better for our community as a whole. I also have the experience of being a substitute magistrate in Dayton Municipal Court for over 3 years, and now sitting on the bench. Why should you vote for me? One simple thing that I tell you is look at my record. Look at the experience. Look what I've done as state rep, and look what we're doing in juvenile court now. One of the many things that I've done in juvenile court since I've been there, we found out that we have 239 children who are stuck in permanent custody who have not been adopted. Many of them are African American and are just sitting there. The easiest thing to do is we need to get them back into the system in the sense of review in front of the judge directly and have that opportunity to look back and see if mom or dad have straightened up and gotten their act in order so that they can come back and parent. Maybe there is kin that have now are able to parent that child. These kids are just languishing, and as I have always believed, that family is the best possible place for all of these children. So we're going to be setting up a program to relook at that. It has been missing in the juvenile court, and I've started looking at that program since I've been on the bench in July. The other thing that we're really looking at, because it has been a problem lately, is many of our cases that we're transferring to adult court. All of the kids that juvenile court has transferred this year are kids of color. I have a House bill that's still sitting out there that's waiting, 394. And it really says give back to the judges, especially the juvenile court judges, the ability to review what is best for those kids. It's called mandatory transfers. Well, I think the kids in our community deserve to be judged by somebody from their community, somebody that's here, seeing them, seeing the resources. And so we want to continue that fight because it's gone on too long. Our kids are committing too high of a crime that we're not getting it right. And we need to continue to look at how do we do that differently. Juvenile court has a lot of different programs. I want to take those programs. They're great programs, but they're stuck in juvenile court. I want to get those programs out in the community to start making a difference, because it starts in the home, it starts with their faith, it starts in the community. So if we can get those programs out in the community, I think we can be a bigger success. That's why I think you should vote for me and keep me in as your Montgomery County Juvenile Court Judge. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone, good evening. My name's Constance Goodell-Newton, and I'm the Green Party candidate for governor. And I'm very happy to be here this evening. Thank you so much for having me out. Just a little bit about my background. I too am an attorney in Franklin County and guardian ad litem. I'm primarily a criminal defense attorney and also work on juvenile justice issues like many of the folks who are here tonight. I'm also an activist attorney. I started my career in activism when I was in college, working on Take Back the Night, an anti-violence march for women. And since then, I've moved on to working on issues surrounding incarceration in the prison industrial complex in Ohio. That led me to become an attorney and to try to keep my friends and neighbors out of jail and out of incarceration, one person at a time. But this is a systematic issue that I work on. I represent a lot of activists in my practice who are fighting for civil rights and social justice. I've represented activists who are standing up for disability rights. The activists who were protesting at Senator Portman's office and were thrown out of their wheelchairs by the Columbus Police Department were some of my clients, as well as environmental activists fighting for our clean water. So a lot of our platform as the Green Party has to deal with environmental issues, and we're calling for an immediate moratorium on fracking and injection wells and pipelines in Ohio to ensure that all Ohioans can have safe drinking water. But we're not just an environmental party. We also are a party of social justice and diversity and grassroots democracy. Many of you may not have heard of the Green Party yet because we are a young, new, and growing party. And we have been around officially in Ohio and had ballot access since 2008 when I helped write the legal filings to help Cynthia McKinney get on the ballot as the Green Party candidate for president in 2008. That year, I also did a lot of election protection activities, organizing observers for the election and exit poll workers. We want to make sure that everybody actually is able to exercise their right to vote. So after 2 presidential elections where there were suspicion of a lot of election fraud, we helped protect the vote in 2008. And so what I want to say is that we have experienced a lot of growth since 2016. So our official numbers have grown about 75% from 2016 to 2018. And we do have a few members in Montgomery County. If people are interested in joining the Green Party or becoming active, I'd be happy to speak with you and connect you with someone in your area. What we really are trying to offer the people in this election is a choice and a voice in our democracy. So often right now we see a political system that is highly polarized around a few wedge issues, and also a system where politicians are bought out by corporate interests. An important thing about all Green Party candidates, and myself included, is that we don't accept corporate donations. We're really trying to represent the people of Ohio in this election and to make our best decisions for the people of Ohio, not based on money from big oil and gas or the private prison industry or the private pharmaceutical industry. We really want to offer the people of Ohio a choice and a voice in our democracy. While I have been working hard to engage professionally with the media, it is difficult to get equal media attention to the major parties. And so recently, Green Party candidates and the Libertarians were kept out of the Ohio governor's debates. We protested, we have filed complaints about that, trying to really make sure that we have fair elections in Ohio. And that can't happen unless people are able to hear from all the candidates on an equal footing. So I want to extend my appreciation again for being invited out to this forum. It's really my pleasure to come out here and meet with you today and to be able to introduce the Green Party platform. Just very quickly, we are for environmental issues. We also stand for universal health care, or Medicare for all, decriminalization and legalization of marijuana and other drugs, decarceration, and we want to really promote a small local green economy. Am I up? Okay, thank you very much.
Good evening. I want to thank the organizers for this candidates forum. I think it's very important that people understand who represents them. I am Charlotte McGuire. I am currently your State Board of Education representative for District 3. District 3 covers Butler, Darke, Preble, Montgomery, and Miami counties. And what does that mean to me? It means that I needed to get into every district in my territory. So I visited over 40 school districts, meeting with students, parents, teachers, administrators, bus drivers, community leaders, because in a representative form of government, you got to know who you represent. You got to get in there and find out what are the challenges and opportunities. So that's what I did. I have over 40 years of government and nonprofit experience. I'm a collaborative leader that looks for community solutions, especially for problems facing the most vulnerable, that resulted in the St. Vincent Hotel for the homeless, the Emergency Resource Bank for the hungry, Reclaiming's Future Initiative for juvenile justice youth trying to overcome alcohol, drugs, and crime, Head Start programs. So why should you vote for me? I want to take a quote from Dr. King. We stop living when we are silent about what matters. I will not be silent because our children matter. I will not be silent because their education matters. And during the last 2 years, what I heard from parents and teachers, they were concerned about high-stake testing. Our children are not defined by a test, and I have worked with my colleagues to reduce state testing in the state of Ohio. I have also worked with them to come up with graduation requirements and pathways, alternative pathways that meet the unique needs of every child. So what do I want to do? I want you to keep me as your voice for our children's success. A voice that says we value children first, we have a vision that they are all created equal and they have the inherent potential to succeed. A voice, keep Charlotte McGuire as your voice for our children's success.
All right, good evening, everyone. I am Magistrate Gerald Parker. I'm running for Montgomery County Common Pleas Court, the General Division. My career started as a Montgomery County prosecuting attorney, where I prosecuted all your felony offenses, from felony 1s down to your felony 5s, protecting the victims of Montgomery County. I did that for approximately 5 years, and then I was hired on by Diagroffel, Mann, and Schultz, handling their personal injury, workers' compensation, little criminal defense, and their litigation as well. Judge Capizzi and then Judge Kuntz found me and asked me to join their team as a magistrate judge in juvenile court. And I can tell you right now that I have seen nothing but the cycle of our youth that are coming from the juvenile court system that are going to go directly into the adult court system. I've unfortunately prosecuted the parents and the older brothers of the youth that are in front of me as we stand here today. And unfortunately to say, majority of those that are coming in front of me look just like me. That is one of the reasons why I'm running, but I'll get back to that a little bit here in a second. You've seen a lot of the for judge signs, whether it's for judge or keep judge. Well, the Dayton Bar Association did a poll and asked the lawyers, about their integrity, their impartiality, their professionalism, their temperament, and their legal ability. And they rated these judges and they rated these judicial candidates. And I received the highest rating amongst all the judicial candidates by the lawyers. So not only are you looking at the candidate that brings diversity to the bench, that brings youth and energy to the bench, you're looking at the highest rated judicial candidate. And I'm very thankful that the lawyers who know the judges have done so. Now, I'm running here because one of the statements that I get from a lot of people is, man, you don't look like a judge, or you look really young to be a judge. Well, that's the point. Like, there's this notion about what a judge is supposed to look like, and it's not like me. I'll be completely honest with you. It's not. But that needs to change, because over half of our jails and prisons are filled with African-American men and Hispanic men, period. But we've never had an African-American male serve a Montgomery County Common Pleas Court General Division. That doesn't make any sense. It's 2018, okay? So I want you to consider going to my website, gpforjudge.com. I want you to see some of the work that I've done for our youth in our communities. That's why I received the Top 10 African American Male Award by Paradia Corporation. That's why I received the Making a Difference Award by WHIO, because of the work that I do. And just today, in this past few years that I've been a magistrate judge, I've had the opportunity to kick down doors and open up some doors from African American youth that want to become lawyers, want to join the judicial system, and want to be a part of it, of the solutions in our communities. And I ask that you give me that opportunity to do so on November 6th and beforehand. Again, Gerald Parker, thank you very much.
Looks like I get to go last. Oh. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for having us here tonight and spending your evening on a Thursday. I know that there are a lot of things that you could be doing, and I appreciate that you've come out here tonight, and I think that we all do. My name is Mary Montgomery. I'm running for Judge of the Common Pleas Court as well. I'm not running against Gerald or any of the judges up here. I'm running for a separate seat. Judge Langer is retiring, and it is his open seat that I am running for. I've been an assistant prosecutor for the past 20 years here in the county. I spent 16 years prosecuting criminal cases. During that time I was there, I moved up through the ranks within the office. I was a supervising attorney at Care House. If you're not familiar with that, that is our county's child advocacy center. I spent a number of years there prosecuting nothing but child criminal and sexual abuse and physical abuse cases. From there, I moved on and I oversaw our grand jury, and then I was a trial team supervisor, teaching young attorneys how to properly try cases and evaluate cases. In 2014, I was made the chief of the civil division of the prosecutor's office. That's a little known division to most everybody, I think, in the community, and quite frankly, it was to me as well. It was an office that was on the 4th floor and that I didn't spend a whole lot of time in. but it's really important because it affects every single one of you in this room. The Civil Division is the law firm for the county. So we represent all of the elected officials, all the departments, the agencies, and any legal matters that come before the county. That also includes representing the county in any of its civil litigation. So why is that important? It's important because I have both the criminal experience and I also have the civil experience. And not just experience in both, I have been in the trenches in both. I have tried cases to juries. I have taken cases from beginning until end. And that's very important for a judge because that way that judge knows exactly what's going on with the cases, knows the attorneys, knows how to deal with evidentiary issues, and can properly handle the cases before them. I started this morning out at 7:15, heading to the Artemis breakfast. I don't know if any of you in here are familiar with Artemis, but it is our local domestic violence shelter, and they do a lot of good work. I looked around that room today, and a lot of the individuals in that room have culminated into me being here today. There were defense attorneys in that room, there were people in the room who were victims of domestic violence, and there were directors of different community centers here. I have worked with all of them, and when I am elected to this position, plan to take all of the county resources that I have had the privilege of working with over 20 years and work together with the court and make sure that we can have the most fair court possible and bring the most resources to individuals that we can. I would certainly appreciate your vote on November 6th. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Latasha Roundtree, and I'm the starter of the grassroots effort for the decriminalization of medical marijuana here in the city of Dayton. I brought this issue to the city because I saw a need. Most of the men who were getting arrested for possession of marijuana were African American men. I served 2 years in AmeriCorps here at the Wesley Community Center. My classroom was on the other side of this wall. I brought things to this center that no one had ever brought to this center. Dr. Walker actually gave me the leeway to do things that kids at this center had never done. So I brought chickens up here, so we did chicken embryology. We did butterflies from catalyst to launching butterflies. Dr. Walker let me bring horses because we had kids from the city who had never ever seen a horse. So I like to do things that are different but open up your mind to different things. When I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian, I was denied medical treatment. I had to go to Michigan in order to receive that medical treatment because the pharmaceutical drugs really did more harm to me than good. And then when I got back to Dayton, I couldn't receive the same treatment and I got sick from the iron that they were giving me. And after receiving a lot of iron, I ended up having to have reconstructive surgery. And that was not even from the being sick, that was literally from the medicine that they were giving me. So I didn't bring decriminalization of marijuana so that people could have access to more marijuana or that people could just go buy it or sell it on the street. I did it because as a patient, I shouldn't be treated like a criminal. Because as a patient, I shouldn't have to be on pharmaceutical drugs that didn't make me feel better. They just masked a problem. I did it because people shouldn't have to go to jail just because they don't want to be on pharmaceutical drugs. I did this because I knew what it was like to lay in bed and want to die. And I knew what it felt like to have to ask one of my family or friends, can you please go get me something? And then wonder if they would get arrested and end up in front of Judge Parker. And it would be my fault. But I couldn't do the pharmaceutical drugs, and nobody should have to feel like that. I did this because I did everything right according to the state of Ohio. I went and saw a recommended doctor. I paid $300. I paid $125 every 90 days just to stay legal and compliant. And the state of Ohio let us down. But that doesn't mean that my pain stops. That doesn't mean that other people with cancer, that they didn't stop. We still needed everything, but what we needed was protection. And so I bought this here for protection. It was not for access. It was simply that if you have it, you don't have to fear that you're going to jail for it. What this did was stop the possessions charge. Now, if you are caught with it, it's not a possessions charge, it's no reporting to the state. So now, if a young person does have marijuana, they don't get a ticket, they don't get a charge, it doesn't show up on their record, they can still apply for financial aid to go to college. If something happens and they need housing, they can get housing. So I did this to make sure that we were safe and that we still had access to whatever we needed. Thank you.
On behalf of West Dayton and the black community, I would like to understand what will you do to solve some of the economic and institutional problems that black people face in West Dayton. Whether we're talking about from the aspect of the issue 8 and blacks most likely being the face of marijuana when it's time to go to jail, but I don't know how many will be granted access to the fruits of development as it goes to a legalized state, to the county commission, how many dollars will be spent in the black community, how many employees from the black community will be represented in the various judge offices, and then to the Board of Education aspect, I'd like to know from the curriculum standpoint, with all the schools in the area for the most part getting D's and F's, what are we doing to change the curriculum and not continue to get material from Texas and other places that have theoretical visions of what the truth is versus science and factual aspects?
And I think if you answer from your area of expertise, because everybody's running for a different office, so.
But they all have economic aspects within each office that impacts the minority, well, I won't say minority community, the black community. And I'm interested in, again, why should I vote for you if I'm not getting anything out of it?
Thank you. Sir, you make some very strong points. Your vote is very important, and the economy of this community is important. And again, I'm here on behalf of Mr. Carl Keith, the current Montgomery County auditor. The county auditor is probably most recognized countywide for setting values for properties. He has to follow the state laws and rules when it comes to that. But a person's home is their castle. Most people's greatest economic effort is to buy a home. Most households focus deeply on what budget's going to be when it comes to paying their taxes. So when you have a neighborhood like Westwood and Residence Park that used to be 100% or 90% owner occupied, and it's turned into a neighborhood that's largely rental properties, high crime, etc. It's important that those homes are valued accurately. Just because a home sells for $10,000 down the street from you, when it has no plumbing, no furnace, no hot water heater, doesn't mean that your home is worth $10,000. But it's the ability of a county auditor to be able to focus in on what a home's value should be. More importantly, making sure that taxpayers have an opportunity to come to the county auditor to address issues of valuation, issues of what's affecting a person's potential to resell a home. The economics of this neighborhood has changed. I grew up on Melbourne, one block or two over from here. Fairbanks, I attended Shiloh Baptist Church. So I know what this neighborhood was like back in 1984. Very different. But as we move forward and we looked at 2024, what will it look like then? And I think a vote for Carl Keith will help maintain values that are in an economic frame that fits what's happening in our community.
Thank you.
I'm Helen Wallace, again, I'm running for juvenile court. And I think what I can do to help improve the economics of this area is help give children an opportunity. Opportunity starts with education. One of the things I want to do as juvenile judge is start an educational tutoring program. Are you all aware of the Children's Learning Center out of the Dayton Masonic Lodge that offers free tutoring to children having trouble reading? Offers free tutoring. The thing is, we need more tutors to be trained so they can teach more children. Dayton Public Schools, as we all know, is not what it should be. But instead of burdening the schools more, asking more of the schools with less resources, I want to help the schools. I think we all need to lend a hand to the schools, because that's where our children are, to help them. To help them. I also want to develop a trade apprenticeship program, because some of the youth that I see that are 15 or 16-year-old are not going to go back and try and do second grade reading. That's not what they want to do. They need an immediate result where they can see something positive happening. Well, you can do that with a skilled trade. You can start making money, you can start earning money, you can start providing for yourself. We can do that. Labor needs more workers, and we need more kids working at a skilled trade where they can have a good lifestyle. So I have a lot of ideas, and I hope to really make some serious changes for your community, sir. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That was an excellent question, and there are a lot of pieces to that, so I'm not going to pretend to try and attack all of them, but I would like to respond on behalf of Carolyn Rice in terms of what she's already done. I told you about the work that she's done with the foreclosure mediation program. That was a real economic boon to our community in the sense that each one of those homes kept people in them rather than becoming an empty house subject to further blight. She's brought $26 million in for the land bank program to actively renovate homes in our neighborhoods, and where that's not possible, to remove them so other development can take place. Going forward, though, there needs to be more. She supported the steps that the current Board of County Commissioners took earlier this year to keep funding in place for offices like the county's Office of Economic Development, which played a crucial role in the development of additional businesses in our community during the recession, including the warehouse that Procter & Gamble operates, the distribution center, including the new Fuyao glass plant down in Moraine. She wants to see that office continue and broaden its efforts to make sure that we have development across the entire county, not just localized, but across the entire Montgomery County. Thank you. Oh, that way.
To answer your question, first off, I'm on the General Division of the Common Pleas Court, and on the Common Pleas Court, we have over our history had 5 African-American judges. We have 2 that are continuing to serve to this day. You know, what I bring to the bench and what I'm going to continue doing for you and for this entire community and all communities in Montgomery County is ensure that the #1 driver of economic development to bring money back into this area is jobs and working. And how do we do that? We do it by having a skilled workforce and people that come back. And when people make mistakes, I do the same thing that I've been doing for, well, over half a decade now, and that's making sure that they re-enter the community and they have the new removals of barriers to employment. You know, we've got a 3-legged stool of justice. We are very good at incarceration, actually compared to the rest of the world, very good at rehabilitation, but you know what? We're missing in restoration. When I gave a talk about restoration or restorative justice to the Montgomery County, or strike that to the Dayton Bar Association, over 100 lawyers and practitioners in the room, and I asked them, does anyone here know what a CQE is, a Certificate of Qualification for Employment? 4 people raised their hand. Myself, the client I used to represent, and 2 of my other judges. 100 attorneys didn't know what we were talking about. And that's the kind of education that we bring. So that way, when I see people for the bad things, as I said earlier, I get to see them for the good. They get to come back to the community, they get to have a fresh start, whether it be from a conviction, or whether it be, as we were talking about earlier, from those driver's license fees and those suspensions. How do we overcome that? We overcome that by making sure that people have knowledge and access to these programs. You know, in 2011, I was one of the co-chairs for the Access to Justice Gala, put on by ABLE, the Advocates for Basic Legal Equality, and Legal Aid of Western Ohio, to make sure that people can absolutely have representation for themselves in court at all levels. And that's what I continue to do as judge. Every day my track record is one that you look up, you can see I'm getting the hook, right? Thank you.
Do you guys handle child support in common pleas? Okay.
And domestic relations.
I just want to know all of your opinions on this, because you're talking about the #1 growth of economic is jobs, right? So what is your opinion, and how can you influence whichever judge is down there or build something around the child support? How does a young man or woman keep a job if they're locked up in jail over child support?
Well, I first want to address a little bit about the other question that was here about the economic impact. One, as a state representative, and again, I challenge you to look at our records and what we've done. Not what we say we're going to do, what we've done. YouthWorks was a program that was on the chopping block in the budget. Thousands of kids directly in our community on the west side were going to be affected. The money was going. Across party lines, we made sure at the state level that that money stayed here, that we could do it our way, which was being successful for the kids in our community. As juvenile court, one of the programs I'm looking at is trying to get outside employers to come to our kids that are on community control or on probation and hire them directly first. Give them the summer jobs. Give them the opportunity, because it not only gives them the skill in the job, it gives them the social skills of how to interact in the community. So that's one major way we can impact how I've done it and how we can do it in the future. With regards to child support, and one of the things, I preside over what's called the motion to impose docket. Those are people who have been found in contempt, have given numerous times, who have not paid any child support. In fact, you see on the docket itself, sometimes somebody comes in front of me and they haven't paid since 2012. Okay, they have an order that's out of control. At the state level, it's starting in April, there's a renew calculation. But one of the things that I do with every individual that comes before me is exactly what your issue is. If they're incarcerated, we're getting zero. Can I work with them? And here's what I do in that court. First and foremost, I ask, how are they doing? We have a conversation. And how can we move forward? How can I help you? There's a lot of programs in our juvenile court, especially with a gentleman by the name of Michael Newsom, does an awesome job clearing up people's backgrounds, getting their license back. I don't know how he does it. He's just phenomenal. Those are one of those resources. But what I challenge each of them to do is, if you've got a $300 order, well, let's start getting in the process of paying instead of me incarcerating you. How can we do that? $50. Come back next month. Let's see how can we move forward. And that's how you move forward, is having the conversation, treating everybody equally, treating everybody fair, and listening. That's probably the most important part.
Okay.
My opponent keeps talking about, let's look at the history of what we've done and his experience at the legislature, the legislator. I want everybody to know that he took over $12,000 from ECOT. I challenged Jeff Rezaback to give that money back to the city of Dayton schools so that we can really see how much he cares about this community. Ma'am, your question was a simple one. I don't know why lawyers drone on and on and on. It's about education. If someone's locked up, they need to file a motion to modify child support. That stops the clock. As soon as that motion's filed, it stops the clock on the child support. You can have a hearing, you can explain to the court that you are incarcerated, unable to work, and the court will take that into consideration, most likely suspend it for the term you're incarcerated, and then when you are back employed, the person who the child support is ordered to could file a motion with the court, it comes back before the court, and once you can earn some money, then you can start supporting your child. Very simple, okay? It's just about educating, learning about the system, and about helping people know about the system, making it work better. Thank you.
About to get warm in here, y'all.
You know, my court is the one that deals directly with failures to pay child support. And when the prosecutor's office brings those charges, that's their charging decision. You know, when I see people, I can absolutely flatly tell you, incarceration is the last option. Absolutely the last option, after everything else has not worked. You know, unfortunately, I see people at it because the worst time in their life. I want to see them for the good. I want to see them becoming better. And every person I see, I ask about employment. We find out, are you working? Where are you working? Verify this. So when we have this record, we can show, well, there's ways we can do it. You know, not too long ago, 2 months ago, I had one person come in front of me, and he was there on the same issue. Well, we did a budget, and over several times sending him back to probation to talk about this budget, to find out where the bills are going, where the money is going. We started doing this. It's the same thing I did for my federal bankruptcy clients, to make sure that there's a budget that makes sense so we can go back and forth. And we're able to find how we could move that individual forward with the jobs, with rebudgeting, and ensuring that, well, incarceration wasn't the option I was choosing. Incarceration was the last. It's there as a stick at the end of the day, an ultimate possibility, but it's never, and it should never be, the very first option. I can tell you, in my courtroom, that's exactly how I run it. That's the way that I started my legal profession. That's the way I started practicing law as a prosecutor, and then as defense attorney, and how I'm going to continue serving you as judge.
Are you running unopposed, or are you running against someone in here?
No, I do have an opponent.
Partner?
Yes.
Did you want to say something? Sure. I just want to be fair.
No, I appreciate that. And unfortunately, I had the unfortunate opportunity to prosecute those that were being charged with these child support cases and handle these cases in Montgomery County. It's about compassion, okay? It's about understanding folks and having that experience and having that qualification to know what they're going through. I talked a little bit about my experience and my qualifications and experience in court, but there's also the African American experience that gets overlooked that's never had in this courtroom. Because if you don't understand those that are coming in front of you and where they come from, how they grew up, because I was raised just like many of them, it's hard to understand where they come from and giving them that second chance. You don't want to overlook those who maybe just look down on somebody because they look differently, like they look different from them. And that's important, because there are many of those judges across this country that look at somebody who doesn't look like them as a second-class citizen, and when they get treated in the courtroom, they get treated as such, and we need to make sure that doesn't happen.
I know that probably most of us have seen 13th, was that 13th Amendment? Yeah. My question is that you guys sound like these are lofty programs that are available for African Americans, and there's these wonderful programs for juveniles, and we're doing such a great job to make sure that we are really pushing our juveniles to come across this particular judge so that they will have a better life. But our mass incarceration continues to increase. The system in and of itself is broken. So for the judges, while you're doing, really pushing these, whatever these programs are for the youth, are you also working on social justice to dismantle the system that is putting our kids in jail?
You know, it is about putting your money where your mouth is, okay? As a magistrate judge, I implemented a program, a CrossFit program, where I take youth primarily in West Dayton, I bring them to a Centerville area where I work out, where I train. It's one of the programs that I started, but I collaborated with Building Bridges, a nonprofit organization, okay? I also collaborated with probation department to give these kids an opportunity, because if we want them to be better, they have to see better, so we have to give them those opportunities. We're able to develop relationships within our gym for folks who work at Chipotle, folks who work at Whole Foods. Now these kids are able to eat, because many of them are living in food deserts. It branches from there. It starts small with the programs, but then you have to build on the relationships that happen within the programs and things like that. So I understand what you're saying with the way the system is working, but you have to get dirty. You, as a judge, when I take that robe off every single Thursday from 5:30 to 6:30, we go into these communities, we get these youth, we bring them out. Why? Because there is a cycle, okay? And if they don't see it, they're going to wind up a part of this cycle. And my job does not stop when I have my robe on. When I leave, we get to work. I have to, because I'm here because so many African American men and women gave me the opportunity to be here. I owe it to those below me and the younger folks to do the exact same thing. And that's the only way you're going to be able to create change. You have to have judges who actually care to go back into those communities. And I don't know if you all know some of the judges who may have not been into the communities. But I'm gonna tell you right now, when I'm elected, I'll be right back here helping answer a lot of those questions and being a part of the solution.
I like that, Mr. Parker. I'd like to ask you one more thing, sir. That sounded great, and I applaud you in that, but I don't feel that her question was answered as how you would dismantle within the system of all the black youth coming into your system. So again, I'd like to reiterate her question. What can you do within the system to stop the youth from entering the system?
Okay, from entering the system.
Yes.
Well, the youth that are on
within your system.
That are either on probation or not on probation, which one?
Both.
Both, yeah. So the youth that I work with are both on and are not on probation. Many of them have nothing to do. Okay, we have so many young black men who want to be LeBron James, who want to be, a hip hop. Today, we just had one who talked about he wanted to be a hip hop artist, but we wanted them to teach him how to rap about nothing more than just drugs and violence, just because that's what they hear.
I think I'm talking about specifically the disparity of the sentencing, the disparity of young 14, 15-year-old boys who are being charged as adults, the disparity of how many young boys are spending time in jail because they can't afford bail. I'm talking about those, the thing is that you rap about what you know. And that's why kids are rapping about drugs. And I don't fault them for that.
Right.
What I fault is the system that continues to oppress suppress them because they don't treat 12-year-olds like 12-year-olds.
Right,
You know, they
absolutely.
are putting kids in jail for way longer than they need to be. So that's what I'm talking about, the disparities. I'm not so
Yeah.
much talking about, I mean, you can't save every young
Oh, absolutely,
person.
yeah, absolutely
So once
not.
you become a judge, how do you take that into consideration so that kids are not spending their life in jail at 14?
Absolutely,
Does
absolutely.
issue one address that,
Does issue one address?
what she's
No,
talking about?
no, issue doesn't, that's a drug, no.
No, issue one is about.
Yeah, absolutely. But again,
It's about reducing felony 4s and 5s to felony 1s and 2s. It's about bringing those felonies down.
Her question was before it gets to a felony, the first onset of going into the system.
Huh?
The data suggests that black kids are treated differently from white kids.
absolutely.
So I'm asking, how do you, as a judge, when you are before a 12-year-old kid who made a huge mistake,
And I'm the adult court,
and
so
you're
I
the,
apologize.
well, juvenile
Or
adult,
adult, okay.
a 24-year-old.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Tell me, how do you guys deal with the disparity of the system, the systematic racial system that continues to mass incarcerate African Americans on a daily basis? That's my question.
The question that, you have to first have that question in your head as a judge in the first place. Because many judges, it's not even crossing their minds.
Because it's
okay?
a personal.
Exactly, it's a personal thing, exactly. So when you understand that there has been many white males who commit the same crimes as black males in the same situations and getting different results, then you, first of all, you have to know that that's happening in the first place. But that's not happening across the country. And that's going to happen when I'm judge. I'm going to understand because I know that this African American male and this white male have the same type of charge, same type of crime, and I'll make sure that they are treated equally. And it helps when you've had that experience.
Let's see what Judge Montgomery, would you like to do?
Sure. So I'm just gonna be honest with you, because I think that there needs to be a healthy dose of honesty. When it comes to the common pleas court judges, we're bound by what the legislature says a judge can sentence somebody to. We just are. We don't get to make up the sentences. The statute says exactly where the parameters are that a judge can sentence somebody. Thankfully, things have changed to some degree in that the goal is to not send so many people to prison. The goal is to keep people out of prison, and let's find a different opportunity for them. And not only that, they're making sure that individuals who come into the system who have an addiction are given multiple opportunities to receive intervention in lieu of conviction, meaning they get drug treatment and then no conviction at all. And so people who should be going to prison are the violent offenders or multiple repeat offenders. And so, again, we're bound by the legislature when there's a sentencing with a particular court. But the judges do need to be cognizant of who's coming before the court. Are they black, are they white, or are we looking at the crime? And we need to be looking at the crime that was committed and looking at all the factors that we're supposed to look at when making a decision on sentencing an individual. And that's what needs to be looked at, not the color of the person.
Okay,
Yeah.
the original question is, what exactly are you doing to make sure that that disparity and that problem with sentencing is actually dismantled so that that no longer becomes a problem?
Well, but I'm not exactly sure what you're saying with dismantling, because let's say, for instance, someone stabs somebody. That is a felonious assault. That's a felony of the second degree. The legislature says the sentence for that charge is between 2 years and 8 years. There is where the discretion lies. There can't be a sentence of less than 2 years. There cannot be a sentence of greater than 8 years. So it is a 2 to 8 year sentence. And so I think what you're asking is, how do you dismantle something? But if someone has stabbed somebody else and they have harmed somebody else, then the question is, how do you sentence somebody in between there? Is that what you're asking?
Okay, think about.
Because you're asking about dismantling.
Brock Turner was a rapist.
Correct.
You know, Brock Turner got 6 months, whatever it was, in prison.
Ridiculous little.
The judge had discretion to charge him, to make him go to prison for much longer. Usually that's, and so maybe I don't understand the system enough to know, why was he allowed that discretion and how do you change that?
The legislature allowed
Okay, and
that.
so do you work with the legislator to make sure that those things are changed?
Well, that is a big question, because that is what the legislature does. That is why you need to know who you are voting as your state representative.
So do you vote,
And
are
you're-
you an advocate for that change?
Well, that's the interesting thing, because judges are supposed to stay out of that kind of stuff. So, I mean, we can't take issues, we can't take
the answer's
up
no.
that.
Okay.
She just, I think.
But I mean, there are advocacy groups that judges do work with. The Ohio Prosecuting Attorney Association does, and there are advocacy groups that work to change, laws that are out there. So judges can be involved in those kinds of things. But the legislature makes that ultimate decision, so you need to know who you vote for.
Thank you. I'm gonna tell you right now, a couple different ways we're attacking this, currently, as I'm on the bench. First, is I'm going into schools. We're talking about it. Like I said, this didn't start when I thought, well, you know what, I should say yes to when they asked me to become judge. This started years ago. I developed a program when I was a prosecutor to combat sexting and cyberbullying, got into every single public school in Shelby County, representing people to stop kids before I ever saw them in my official capacity. It's the same thing I'm doing now as judge. It's why for the last month and a half, I've been in every single Friday in a different school, in a different high school. Last year, it was the same thing, because I want to talk to kids about the judiciary, about the problems that they're facing, about the issues that they're going to encounter, so that they know well before they ever see me, before they ever make a thought to do something, what is the potential. To answer the ultimate question, how do we reduce incarceration? How do we dismantle that issue? Well, frankly, I'd encourage you to look up my record. My record is one of public record. Every single day you can go to the Montgomery County Court's website, you can pull up Judge Blaine, you can find every decision I make, because every decision I make is in writing as part of the record. That's part of the reason the Second District Court of Appeals keeps affirming my decisions. Unfortunately, I'm the only judge in the Common Pleas Court that you can say that does that, because my opponent might be a good magistrate, might be a great magistrate, you might not be. There's 10 different magistrates, and unfortunately, you can't access those records. So we don't know what that record actually is. But I can tell you right now, pull my record. Take a look at that and really find out what's going on. Because you know what? To look at the crime and judge by the crime, that's where you have to start. You have to dig so much deeper to find out about a person. Every pre-sentence investigation I get is 20-some pages long. I get them on Fridays. I require them to my office on Friday afternoon. So that way, on Tuesday, I've worked over the weekend to find out what I can do to best change that person. Because you know what? The work I've done in the community, that helps a lot, but there are gonna be some people that are gonna appear in front of me. And when I do have them, I wanna find out everything about them. What treatments worked, what treatment hasn't worked, where they're from, what education level they have, what their employment history is, what their criminal record is. And you know what, let's find something better. Let's find something that works for that person, rather than just a crime. We're not measured by our worst day. We're measured by the days that come between them and how we rebuild afterwards.
Hold on, let me get you, go ahead. Let's move it along, because we want everybody.
I want to answer her question directly.
Okay.
About dismantling the system. I've tried to do that at the state level. House Bill 394. We're stopping with that bill, hopefully getting successfully through the House, and then through the Senate in this next lame duck period that they're going to have. It talks about stopping giving kids life without parole. That's what it does. We still do that in Ohio. I mean, the Supreme Court, it's always against, and if you look at it, it's kids of color that are, that's my bill. Okay, you want to talk about things that we've done, how we're dismantling that bill. Same thing about mandatory transfers. The prosecutors are charging any kid with a gun, no matter their age, well, I think it's 14 and up now, but they are focused in on transferring to adult court. Well, depending on their age and their history with the juvenile court, we have no discretion. It's mandatory transfer. House Bill 394 tries to stop that.
So
And so that's to answer your question, yes, I've done it. Yes, we can, as judges, we can continue to advocate through our organizations and say we want these changes. We want the ability to evaluate that family and evaluate that child, especially in juvenile court, to make that difference. And I have tried to do that at the state level. I continue to do it because we're looking at all the disparities that are, especially in kids of color, especially, and then jumping back a little bit to those kids that are in foster care that are stuck, that aren't getting adopted. We need to continue to focus in on that. So that's the right answer
Jeff,
to your
just
question.
make clear that you did that as a state rep.
Yeah.
Right.
Not in your position as a judge. I
No,
just wanna
that was-
make
that's
So
my bill that's pending.
That's what I was trying to clarify.
Yeah.
So it's a political issue It starts with.
Yeah,
a
but our
politi-
question is, what are you doing
For-
individually? That's what I've done.
For clarity, for political education clarity, it starts at the political level, right? Am I right? It starts with the representatives. They make the laws.
No.
And then, is that where it starts?
Well, no. Do you know how many people, like yourself, came to my office in Columbus and asked for a law, and we worked on it? Absolutely.
But it
Well,
still
it
starts
with
with
the
you.
community. We
I
gotta
mean,
rise up, and we gotta make sure we do that, yes.
But
But
the-
it would start at a legislative level, and then, if you get it through passed, then it can be done. But it's
And
about
ju-
the
wait a
community
minute, just
getting
for clarity,
tired enough.
And once it gets to Parker or Blaine right here, he already has the statute in front of him, right?
So we have a significant amount of jurisdictional discretion as judge. You know, I only deal with the adult felonies. We don't have juveniles in our system unless they're bound over. But you know, that discretion is key, because just because you have a number next to the felony, doesn't mean that that is the right sentence for you. It doesn't mean that absolute prison, except for certain crimes which we have no choice over, is the right call. The person is who we need to look at, who I look at every single day.
So you
as
have some
judge.
discretion.
We do. We have, if you have fourth or fifth degree felonies, there's a presumption for probation. If you have a third degree felony, it waffles, but second and first degree felonies, there's a presumption from the General Assembly that I have to send you to prison. Now, that presumption is rebuttable. It is rebuttable by the showing of certain criteria and certain elements that, if shown for that person, can rebut that presumption.
Can reduce
But it's-
that,
and reduce that, and give me the leeway, the option to find what's best for a person. Maybe if it's not prison, let's find what works out there.
But you equally can't send someone to the maximum either without meeting certain statutory guidelines either. I want that to be made clear, because if you send someone to the maximum sentence, they can appeal that and say you shouldn't have done that. You didn't meet all those factors. I just want to make, that's where our discretion comes into play. Okay, so you can appeal, that can be appealed.
Everyone should have one, and everyone
Okay,
needs to make sure
let's
they have access
move
to
on, Bill.
justice.
Come on, brother.
I want to be respectful of people's time, so I'm going to keep it simple. Issue one is probably the closest thing we have to criminal justice reform on the ballot. It's not perfect. But I just want to ask, do you agree with the spirit of issue one, which is less jail time, decriminalization of minor offenses? And secondly, to issue 8, do you just overall agree with the legalization of marijuana?
It is not the
Medical or
legalization.
otherwise?
No, it is the decriminalization of marijuana. It's not the legalization.
Okay, yes, yeah, so my question is, are you for the legalization,
So that's a
period?
criminal
Flat out.
justice question. Y'all getting all the questions. Let's ask the
Thank you.
potential governor over there.
Thank you. Thank you. From the beginning, when I announced that I was running, I listed dismantling the prison industrial complex in Ohio as a top priority. Part of that comes from my work with my clients. I see what people are going through in their communities, and I've seen that in Columbus, where I work, that the Black community is really in crisis because of over-criminalization. So yes, I am in support of issue 1. I think that drug addiction should be treated as a health issue, not a criminal issue, and that we cannot incarcerate our way out of the opiate epidemic. I also would just like to say that as governor, I would have control over the mission and purpose of the Department of Rehabilitations and Corrections. And I would like to see an end to the private prison industry in Ohio as just a start towards the steps towards decriminalization. Private prisons are private corporations, and their duty is to their stockholders. They do not have a moral imperative to punish, and you see them punishing for a profit. They've lobbied to keep drugs illegal so that they can keep their beds filled, and that profit motive is really a conflict of interest. I could say a lot more about it, but thank you very much.
Excuse me, sir. Can she,
Okay.
while she's the governor's candidate and would be representing the whole state of Ohio, and she addressed the economic issue with Black folks, the fact that when highway construction and everything else goes on, we rarely see minorities on the contracts or even being the workers.
Which is wrong.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, as far as the economic issues, those are extremely important and something that we've researched as we've put together our platform. So as someone who extends contracts, we would have a high emphasis on diversity and minority contracts. Also, we need to stop the practice of redlining communities so that lending can be extended to minority communities. I'd like to see a program of local and state banks that has a focus on community lending in the African American community and in other communities.
Real quick, issue 1, for or against?
Well,
Real
judicial
quick.
candidates cannot take positions
Oh,
on
that's right.
issues that might come before the court.
Issue 1?
But I do have some thoughts.
I will get there.
The spirit is like,
Huh?
Can I rephrase that? The spirit of issue 1.
You think it's going in the right direction?
Well, I want to talk to you about it from a Montgomery County perspective. And I think that this is important because in Montgomery County and the way the state legislature has it set up, if individuals are brought in on a low-level felony offense, they are allowed to have intervention in lieu of conviction. And that's treatment in lieu of conviction. That means they get drug treatment and they don't get a conviction. And the legislature, as of October 28th, is changing the law, and they can get that as many times as they need it. So there is no conviction at all. Whereas if you make it a misdemeanor, there's a misdemeanor, now you have a conviction and no treatment.
Right. I think Montgomery County is pretty easy.
They're very
If you
good
go to
about
Greene
the treatment.
County, you going to jail. How
That's
about
what I'm
you?
saying, in Montgomery County, we
Right.
have a lot of treatment available here.
And it's
and
been
we're
like that
hard
for a
it.
long time, 'cause I got a little history in it.
absolutely, the spirit of issue 1 is definitely something we're in support of. I'm in support of. But that still goes back to the work that they try to do before folks get there and making sure that they are not put back into the same situation that they are when they got the drugs in the first place, which is why you have to be more progressive, more proactive outside of the courtroom as well.
Ms. McGuire, you know about issue 1?
Well, it's not an educational issue. I was in a district today where a 3rd grader didn't show up for school. The teacher went to the house, and guess what? The mother had OD'd. So the concern is, how do we prepare our children in an educational setting to avoid drugs altogether? So we are promoting what we call a very extensive drug education. We need prevention and early intervention before they get into treatment. And I really want to talk about the economic, can I say
Go
something?
ahead.
About the economic development issue. I grew up in a neighborhood just like this in Memphis, Tennessee, in segregation. A poor neighborhood. Education is the equalizer, so when you talk about economic development, you want every child to be successful, that they can put food on their own table, they can get a place and put a roof over their own head, and have personal responsibility. We have developed a 5-year strategic plan to assure that there's equity. That means every child gets what they need to meet their needs, aspirations, and dreams. Every child in Ohio will be challenged, prepared, and empowered to pursue their life course. Because when you talk about economic development, and I was one of those, I was determined I wasn't gonna be dependent on the government. And nothing against men, I wasn't gonna be dependent on no man. But I wanted to live independently with dignity and respect. And that's what I want for every child. So what are we doing? It's being sure that we equip the children with options and opportunities that meet their unique needs, because no 2 children are alike. Every child is not going to college, but we should offer them options where they can either get a skilled trade, do tool and die, be a welder, whatever that career path may be. So we do it through equity, making sure we have quality partnerships, especially with the faith community, and that we have quality schools. Economic development is not only for now, it's for the future, that every child is productive, they're resilient, they are a contributing positive member of society, and our education system should do that. Education is the equalizer.
I'm gonna go down to this end, because I've been neglecting y'all. Issue 1, brother?
Carl Keith, again, I'm here to represent Carl Keith as a county auditor. Issue 1 doesn't really affect much of what he does. However, as a citizen of Montgomery County, a person who was raised here my whole life, You know, I think I have mixed emotions because it wasn't until Colorado made a whole bunch of money off of doing things with marijuana that the other states started to look at it. You know, pharmaceutical companies have been trying to create the same effect that you get from the cannabinoids with chemicals. Chemical engineers have been trying for years. They still haven't been able to do it. It's one of those natural things. It's just by God.
I think that's issue 6 that you counted. Or issue 8.
But-
How about you?
Um,
But yeah, you're right.
Yes, young man, I agree with the spirit of issue 1. How's that for a straight answer?
That's it, spirit.
Yeah, I want to preface it by saying the county commissioners, let me stand up. The county commissioners have a dog in this fight. You do too in terms of just budgetary issues. Some 70.5%, 70.5% of the county's general revenue budget, the money you pay in sales tax, goes to fund the criminal justice system, the courts, the sheriff's office, the jail, that sort of thing. So anything that puts money into that system means that we don't have money to spend on things like economic development, like job creation, job growth. Carolyn strongly supports the spirit of issue 1. We have a discussion regarding the mechanics of it, but the spirit of it, I think, is in the right direction. It reflects, we think, a growing consensus in our country towards looking at how we have criminalized many of these issues and how we back away from that in a way that grows our community. These convictions are not just for the brief period of time relatively that people are incarcerated. These are convictions that follow people throughout life and cripple their ability to be successful economic citizens. So we're on board with the spirit.
Judge?
You know, to answer your question, before I became judge, I was on the board of professional conduct that governs all attorneys and judges in the state. 24 of us that made sure that recommendations to Supreme Court justices were based on the law. And frankly, on issue 1, we are allowed to talk about it. We are allowed to tell you what our position is. We're not allowed to do a call to action, but we are allowed to tell you that. And I can tell you, I voted no for issue 1. The reason I did is for the last year and a half and long before that, I've been fighting this problem. My background's in psychology. That's my undergraduate. We don't have an opioid problem. We don't have a fentanyl problem. We don't have a carfentanil problem. We have an addiction problem. And that addiction problem is what continues to fuel us, regardless of what the modality is. The reason I voted no on issue 1 is for the last year and a half, we've been going around over 50 different churches, organizations, schools, everybody we can, talk about it. And we go in, not only with law enforcement there to talk about what they're doing, the courts there talk about what we're doing, but also, I always have somebody that's in recovery talk about what it was like to go through it. And for most of those people in recovery, it's not the first time, it's not the second, or third, or the fifth. They take a lot of times multiple trips to treatment. How do we do this? Well, you have to have the felony world to be able to do it, because ultimately, you don't have treatment, 4 different treatment courts: men's drug court, women's drug court, veterans treatment court, and mental health court in the municipal courts where they go. You don't have all of those options that are available on the common police court. That's one of the reasons. Additionally, issue 1 is a constitutional amendment. It's the bones of our government. If we look at this, and over 230 years of the United States Constitution, 27 different amendments. 27 of them, and we're 230 years. If this amendment, if it's right, that's great. If it's wrong, though, we don't get to change it. We don't get to come back and have the General Assembly write the law to make it better. We're stuck with it. And that's a very, very big if, because so many people are alive today because of the treatment options. So many people are alive today because of that. You know, it took me only a few weeks on the bench to get my first death notice of somebody that had appeared in front of me. And 1 death notice is too many, but I get them regularly. You can get them, they're all online. Again, my record is the public one. You can see all this. But these treatment options going into families of addicts, talk directly to them about various things from restoration and recovery, all the way to issue 1. Well, when FOP, for order police, agrees that they recognize it as a bad risk, and the families of addicts recognize it and see it as a bad risk, both. That's something to take a second look at. That's something to think, is this the right way to do it? Or is there a better way to do it that we have more control over?
Thank you.
let me,
We got some diversity up in here.
let me address it, and I think, I think most of us.
Try to be brief.
Yes,
okay, so
because I got 2 points. I think most of us are in agreement with the spirit in the sense of looking at treatment first at all options. I encourage you to read the amendment, because there are some concerns. One, on the juvenile side, when that amendment was passed in California and Oklahoma, it didn't have juvenile court in it. Because now they threw juvenile court in 2 lines, and it really now affects us, because now all of a sudden, instead of reporting and talking about our programming going through the Department of Youth Services, it shifts it to the Adult Division, Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections. And all of a sudden, we've tried so hard to keep them separate because they really do different populations. So that's one concern. The other concern is you talked about the incarceration level. Read what it says about on felony 1s, 2s, and 3s. If you give probation, you can never incarcerate that person in prison. My fear is you have judges who won't give. We have an opportunity. As a defense attorney, I've had a ton of individuals that you work with the court and you show them, even though they have an F1 or they have an F2, give them a chance on probation. There are all these things. Under that, even under those F3s, my fear is that all of a sudden those judges at the common pleas level are going to all of a sudden say, nope, I can't send you, if I give you probation, I can't send you to prison, so I'm going to send you to prison first. That's a concern. Will that happen? I don't know, but that's a concern. I think the spirit is heading in the right direction. I think the mechanics are something else. So,
Come on.
I wanted to switch the topic back to the economic piece. This question goes to the county auditor. Is it, right, and also the commissioner. I know, Rice, you said that she had the mediation, program. Is that still in place?
No, the funding for that expired.
Okay, is there any alternative to that program?
One of the problems county government, and not just county government, but municipal government, school boards have had in Ohio over the last 10 years is that some of the funding we used to get, revenue shared with us from the state of Ohio to local government, have dried up or been cut severely during that period of time, which has left many of these areas struggling to meet obligations that they have, and as well as new programs that they need to make. Yes, we'd be interested in seeing what could be done to restore funding for the mediation program. It was successful when Carolyn operated it with the funds that she has. If we had additional funds to do that, that would be something that we would consider, certainly.
Okay, and then to, as auditor, I mean, I'm quite sure you see it everywhere, and this is a commission question too, and to any of the judges, dealing with slum landlords and the dilapidated of the housing stock. I'm working with a nonprofit organization to revitalize the Westwood area, and our hands are literally tied, because we're begging, we talk about the lot rent program, the land banks. What's the goal, what's the plan? I mean, as an auditor, like this one property, we're trying to do a beautification project, but we can't do it because the landlord lives somewhere in the land, and nobody is putting their foot on their neck and saying, you need to do something with this property, because ultimately it's tearing down the whole community, because the people next to them, their property value goes down. So can you address it as an auditor, as commissioner, and a judge? Can y'all do more to the slum landlords to do what? So.
Certainly, that's a big issue for the county auditor when it comes to reevaluation or setting value for a property, the state of the structures around a subject property. When it comes to what can you do with an out-of-state landlord, you know, the power is really in the municipality's hands. You know, I think the city of Dayton has to be more active in creating a penalty for people who are irresponsible, and then making that penalty effectuate over time. You know, I've noticed that when you want to really deal with a person who's out of town, who's not taking care of the property, you got to sock it to their pocket. You got to put more, I think, penalties from that municipality, from whether it's uncut grass to an unmaintained home. You know, you go out to Oakwood, they have they'll put a penalty on your house if your gutter's hanging off. You know, but you ride through Residence Park, you got plenty of houses with gutters hanging off. Does the city of Dayton have a penalty for that property owner? I don't know. But I think the answer to your question starts with the municipality and making sure the city of Dayton or Harrison Township or Trotwood has rules in place that really hold property owners, and particularly out-of-state property owners, accountable for how they maintain and hold their properties.
Okay. And Commissioner, what position do you think Rice would have on trying to do as a commissioner to put more penalties to try to change this around, because it's just getting worse?
Well,
I mean, you have some streets and there's literally one house on it.
right. First part of the answer is, we agree.
Okay.
I think the position that the auditor's representative put forth is a logical, intelligent way to look at it in terms of how you get the municipalities to actively enforce existing codes. I think that's part of it, holding people who own property and don't take care of it responsible. The other part is for those who live in our neighborhoods, those who spend their lives in these houses trying to keep them up, is find ways that those individuals can access the resources they need to keep their homes in good shape. Because there's really a couple of different populations. There's the landlord population you were referring to, and then those of us who live in our neighborhoods and live in the houses that we've purchased or rent. We want to keep those places up to snuff.
And you said she got $290 million. Do you know where that money came from?
$26 million.
26 million. Do you know where that came from?
Federal government, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Right, thank you.
Mr. Parker mentioned earlier food desert, and in the west side there is this very serious food desert. Does anyone have any jurisdiction or any ideas about that? It does affect people in many ways, in a very foundational way, and it needs to be solved.
Well, personally, I'm a member of Gem City Market. I think that's a great initiative started to try and do something about the food desert. As a mother and as a attorney in juvenile court, I can tell you that what children eat affects them. Their nutrition affects their behavior. A lot of, red dyes, blue dyes from bug juice, that makes my kids crazy. You need to get good nutrition back in the communities, in juvenile court. They now serve our children jail food. Do you know that? The same food that the adult prisoners get in jail is what our kids in juvenile court get. That's not okay with me. Would that be okay with you as a mother? It's not okay with me. So I think fundamentals, kids need sleep, they need a warm bed, a decent house, a safe way to school, they need good food in their bellies, and you will see behavior improve. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Just briefly, same thing. I mean, also partnering with Gem City Market, I think it's very, very vital. I think it's unfortunate when you see JJ's Seafood and Chicken and then you see dialysis centers like right up the street. That's troublesome. I mean, if that doesn't send a message to you as to what's being implanted into our communities, I don't know what to tell you. And that's why I think it's very important when we do bring these youth to understand that's important that they have something green, purple, and red on their plate. Because that goes with you for the rest of your life, even as to adulthood. And adults can be able to do the same thing as well. That's what I want to continue to stress, a big health person, which I think gets lost a lot in many communities. So.
We understand the nutritional need, but what is being done to solve the problem of the community being a food desert?
Yeah, and like I said, yeah, right. Yeah.
Excuse me, if I might help her out a little bit. She means other than Gem City Market. Because we're still in a food desert, even when Gem City Market comes to fruition.
Absolutely. In the first budget that I was in 4 years ago now, I worked with who's now Speaker of the Ohio House, Representative Smith at the time. Him and I, he was the finance chairman. Him and I put in $10 million into the budget, and it's still sitting out there for communities to directly fix their food deserts. Specifically, it was for me working with Mayor McDonald and trying to get any entity to come into the Trotwood area on the west side to use those funds. Speaker Smith mobilized his community. He represents, I think, 6 counties in the southeast part of Ohio, and one of his counties, Vinton County, didn't even have a grocery store in the entire county. They used some of that funding through a cooperative to make sure that they eventually got one. That money is still sitting out there, and we keep continuing to try and work with anybody. Now I'm out of it, but the state can have, there's a program out there, the Healthy Food Initiative that we started. It has that money. Just waiting people to apply for the grants and that can go forward.
Who's running for that position that you left? You know?
And I left, J. Todd Smith took my spot, and Dan Foley's running.
And I just want to make clear that, again, that's a legislative issue,
Right,
not a
right.
judicial, because the judicial, they can't do
Exactly.
that.
We needed really more politicians here than criminal justice.
I was just asking a question of how, if there are programs out there right now that are just pending, that I was initially a part of.
To answer that question a little bit as well, as judges, we don't have that jurisdiction. That's, I've been blessed with the judge's gavel, not a legislator's pen. I don't want that. We have a third and independent branch of government for it. But what the job of the judge, it doesn't start and end on the bench. The job of the judge, you wake up and you go do it, but when you take off the robe, you continue doing it. Anyone know Michelle Riley? Michelle runs the food bank, the Dayton Food Bank. She helps run that program. This is a program that brings jobs back in, brings training back in for people of all walks and of all records. That right there helps. That's continuing to help. They just started a hydroponic grow operation there as well to help utilize the space even more effectively and more efficiently. The job of the judge is something to come into communities and talk about this, to learn what's going on, and then also, and most importantly, to be an advocate and talk to people about what is happening here. We can't politic, we can't do the proposing of bills, but what we can do as judge, as an attorney, I could talk about a program. I could tell you about something happening in Dayton. I used to live in Dayton. I could tell you something happening in Dayton. I could tell you something happening in Vendale. I could tell you about something happening in Trout. But you know what? Few people listen. As judge, want to do the same thing. Now people are listening, people are hearing, and they're making that change. They're affecting it. And so that's how we establish those connections. You know what? Change doesn't happen here by busing kids out of here. It doesn't happen here by leaving. Change happens here by coming in here and continuing to. Because all of Montgomery County is where I serve. Every single area. That's why all of Montgomery County is where as judge I've been, and as attorney I've represented people from all walks. Mike Wright, Rick Schultz, and I, we partner up together to make sure we do all this, to make sure that everybody is represented. Everybody has great legal counsel, and everybody knows what they're expecting when they walk into court, and now especially into my court.
Thank you, Judge. Let me get this gentleman here because he hasn't had a chance.
I grew up here in Dayton, and I've just returned after like 40 years. And what I've seen is so much disparity between the east side and the west side. I'm a retired urban design and city planning consultant, and I'm trying to figure out why I'm seeing so much boarded up homes, great structures with that are they're substandard, the code, they're out of code, they're boarded up, and I know for sure there's companies moving back into this area. I came up here because of a company that just moved in here. So the economic development is coming up, but it seems to me like the housing market is being crushed down to zero on the west side of Dayton, waiting for development to come back in. And I don't see anybody on a county-wide basis. Montgomery County, there's no regional planning department that addresses the whole county. I don't see any kind of economic development going on the west side. It seems like everybody's waiting for industry to move back in, and so that they can buy up all the properties. And so who can address this issue?
Welcome back home. And it is a different world here now. But when you talk about economic development, Dayton is not in a bubble. When we lost a great number of our citizens from this community, we had vacant abandoned homes. These blighted properties became nest eggs for crime, for drug dealing, and the like. So they became boarded up. The land bank that was discussed earlier is something that started in Cuyahoga County and has been a big resource for taking properties that were not performing on the tax rolls, vacant and or abandoned, vandalized, to become a property that is reused now and properly being taxed and functioning in its regular capacity. So the land bank and that reutilization piece is part of what you're talking about when you're saying, how does a neighborhood that's got 60 homes on the street, but only 4 of them are occupied, those that can't be reused, that can't be rehabbed, get torn down. And that can become a component to affect the nutrition piece. Because you go to Detroit, where I used to live, you know, a lot of those blocks that had the same kind of thing, they're starting farms now. Subsistence farming is a great way to create opportunities for nutrition. That's low cost but high impact.
Well, my question is, who owns the properties?
Well, you know, sometimes it depends. It's different people. You know, sometimes these properties, to qualify for the land bank, it has to be a property that's vacant and/or abandoned, and the value is exceeded by unpaid taxes. The moment that occurs, the prosecutor's office and Carolyn Rice are able, and the municipality where they're located, can work together to put those properties into useful hands.
And they could be, and I work, this is what we do at the prosecutor's office with the treasurer's office, and the auditor's office. Yeah, and the auditor's office as well through the Board of Revisions.
I'm Carl Keith's representative on the Board of Revisions.
Okay, so some of these properties could be mortgage foreclosures, and if they're mortgage foreclosures, then it's in the mortgage company's hands to handle them. If they're tax foreclosures, then a lot of times we try to find end users for them, so that they're not just foreclosed upon and they sit there and do nothing. So Carolyn has done a great job trying to make sure that we have people at the end of that process who, when we foreclose upon a property, there's someone who will take it and they're gonna do something with it as opposed to leaving it abandoned. And that's where also the land bank comes into play, because that's what they wanna do as well. So
That's also an issue with code enforcement in making sure those properties are taken care of or taken down. But there are investors who are buying up these big blocks of land. And I know that's what's going on here. And there's something needs to be taken care of. There needs to be some kind of regional planning department that oversees all of this.
that's
But
community and
everything is
economic
based on
development.
communities.
Community
It's
and
got
economic
control over
development through the county handles that. I mean, that you, and with your background, you might wanna contact community and
I think a
economic
lot of the
development.
problem
Definitely gonna
is
do
getting people interested in these neighborhoods again.
Yeah,
A lot of people aren't interested, they think these neighborhoods are full of crime. And those of us who live here don't see it as being as bad as people who don't live here.
Well, that's a
But-
problem with the police department. They
It
don't,
is,
they don't.
it is.
they
But
don't hear
I
there's
think
no
if we could,
presence on that
if
side.
like,
No
somebody
presence.
said, if we could get people interested in coming back into the city and making use of a lot of, but it's a big deal. And I think a lot of the problem, like with lot links, is just, it takes so long to get, and it's so expensive to get these properties. If you could get them in 3 or 4 months, but it takes like a year and a half sometimes.
You have to clear title.
And
You
they
have to
won't-
do a title search. You have to
Right.
find any owners and make sure that no one else has a right to that property before the
And I understand.
treasurer takes it away. to
It's
go
a
somewhere
big
else.
deal, but I think that in West Dayton in particular, there hasn't been enough emphasis on anything. You know, I look at Good Sam closing, right? I don't blame the commissioners, but I think the fact that we didn't have a strategic plan for West Dayton, we weren't prepared when that happened, or that led to that happening. And I think that's the problem in West Dayton, gets ignored. That's what the problem is. It gets ignored, so. Wait a minute, I got to get her.
But just in closing, one of the things that I think is important about the criminal justice system is that what Mr. Parker said, I think is right on point. He doesn't stop being a judge just because he takes his robe off. So my question to all the people who are running for the judgeship, are you aware of, in touch with the people in the communities that you have to actually see once they come into your court? Do you understand the community? Do you go into the community? Do you understand the problems with the African American community so that when they do come before you in court, and I think several people have said that we know more about their situation, we know more about their home life, we know more about their communities. So what exactly specifically you're doing to make sure that you are aware of the people in the community that you are going to have to actually sentence or, recommend for these programs, so that you have a better understanding of what the African American community is dealing with?
You need to look at the individual person. You need to make a judgment call. Does this person really care? Does this person really understand? I was a guardian ad litem for over a decade. I went all throughout Montgomery County, including West Dayton, to homes, to schools, to sit down with kids, spent hours and hours with kids here in West Dayton. I understand. I'm a mother. I have a 15-and-a-half-year-old son. He happens to be white. But my God, if you think I don't think about what would happen if he was black, and if you think I don't know what goes on in this society, and I'm not outraged by it, you would be wrong. Now you're gonna have to make that judgment call about all of us up here and everybody you vote for. You need to look at the person's character, who they are, what they've done, and what they care about. Thank you.
Excuse me, may I ask you, what have you done or where have you been exactly in West Dayton?
Yes, well, as a guardian ad litem, I was all over the county. But the learning center that I talked about earlier, and I don't want to drone on and on about myself, but I sat on the board of that learning center. Do you know that learning center serves mostly this community? Those kids that
What's
get
the name of that learning center?
Children's Learning Center. It's out of the Masonic Lodge.
Where's that at again?
Masonic Lodge, right by the Art Institute on Riverview.
Riverview.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to get the exact location.
Listen, because my husband and I have the resources, I pay for my son to be tutored, $75 an hour, 3 times a week. What I try and tell people about, because I sit on the board and I work very closely with the director, Donna Donahue, if you're interested in learning how to tutor a child, you can both tutor a child for free through the Learning Center and also make $75 an hour tutoring children for private gain. Do you know what I mean? It's a win-win. So what have I done? Not only being a guardian ad litem, but I've sat on that board. I wrote grants for that center for our children, for your children. That's what I've done. Worked my fingers to the bone because I care so much about our kids. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Anybody else? You want to, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Sure.
Yeah.
Within the first 6 months of taking office, I was in every single community in Montgomery County. We hosted Open Joe with the Judge. Come in, let's have coffee together. We brought the coffee, we brought the fresh, and let's have people in because I want to know what's going on in the communities. I don't want to just assume that we know what's going on. I don't want to take people out of here. I want to come into the communities. That's what in the very first 6 months of being in office. And that's why when I walk around Montgomery County, when I go into Trotwood in the middle of the evening to deliver ice, to deliver water, to help, when I go to the West Dayton, well, I was asked to be one of the judges for several years now for the district mock trial competition. And we've held it at Stivers, we've held it at Dunbar. It's been amazing. That's what I'm doing, and that's why even before becoming judge, even before the thought crossed my mind that they would ask me to become judge, I was already doing it. And that's why we continue to do this, we're continuing to be here right now. Every single person, every single life in this county matters. And the only way we know about what's gonna happen in your community is when we come to your community and we talk to you. We have a good discussion like we're having now. So thank you very much for asking that question. I greatly appreciate it.
We got a few more minutes left. Come on, sister.
I just want to say 2 little quick things. I'm not really a speaker. Number one is myself personally, I have grown kids. And I feel like the educational system, first of all this regular school read, write, and arithmetic is not getting it with a lot of our children now. We really, I think need more schools or more classes that will put them in plumbing. I bet you everybody in here needs a plumber or a carpenter or electrician or a painter or somebody, and you cannot find them. So I think that was one thing that I wanted to throw out, that we need more things like that. And I don't know if this group has anything to do with that. But the other thing that I was going to say is that this room probably would have been packed, but I don't think we get anything out. I don't think, and it might be just me, I never hear about any kind of meetings or anything until it's over with or you see it on TV. So I don't know who would be responsible, and I'm not blaming anybody up there, but we don't get anything out.
I'm really going to answer your question more from a community level as opposed to a candidate level. Here in the county, we have the Job Center, and it is a vast place with resources that are untapped right now. And that Job Center will pay people to get trained to be plumbers and carpenters and electricians and dental assisting. They have to meet certain criteria, but for the most part, they can go and they can get trained, and it's free, and then they can have that certificate coming out to go find the job. And not only that, the job center will help them find a job. Relating that to my candidacy for judge, because I know what the county resources are, because I represent the county, I want to be able to link the courts up with the resources at the job center for people who are convicted of felonies that are placed on probation. Because if they're told to get a job and they have no job to get because they're a convicted felon, we need to help them get there. And so I want to make sure that we're linking people up accordingly with the job center so that they can in fact get trained and then get a job that they need, so we can meet them where they are. Because if we tell somebody to go get a job and they don't have a car, they don't have any other transportation, and they don't have the money to pay for that training, what are we expecting them to do? We've got to help people get to that particular point. So from your perspective of that, there are resources in the county and they are there, we just have to use them.
Thank you, Judge. You want the mic?
Yes, sir.
When she's done, I'd like to have a crack.
I think you bring up a good point, and even what Ms. Montgomery pointed out is primarily for adults at the job center, but we are redesigning education in Ohio. Every child is not going to college, but they need to be equipped with the knowledge and skills that will make them productive. So we're changing the graduation pathways and the requirement. I have been working with my colleagues to come up with a 5-year strategic plan with the whole child in the middle, and that whole child will get not only what they call basic knowledge and skills, but we will also deal with the social emotional issues, because a lot of children are coming to school hungry, without clothes, but there's a lot of trauma, especially in our minority communities. So we're working on that, but we're also working on the 21st century skills, problem solving, reasoning, project-based management. We want to do personalized learning that gets a child on a path based on their unique needs and aspirations. So we are working very close with our career tech schools. So we got traditional schools, we got the career tech schools. We want to be sure that every child can either be in tool and die. We are promoting internships and apprenticeships in the public school system now. If you look at the 5-year strategic plan, which was just adopted in May of this year, you will see that we are redesigning Ohio's public education, where every child is challenged, prepared, and empowered to succeed and thrive. So we're on it.
Thank you. Our school funding system in Ohio has long been found unconstitutional in the DeRolf decision. A system based on property taxes leads towards segregation in our schools and poor funding in many of Ohio's schools. So we propose to fix our school funding model. We want to move towards a constitutional model of funding that's not based on property taxes, by adjusting the local government funding formula to make sure that local governments have adequate funding. We want to make sure that every child has a good quality public education from preschool to college, and that vocational training is a part of that. But I think that what's really essential is that we restore Ohio to a constitutional school funding model and ensure that all school districts have adequate funding regardless of property taxes.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate the support I've seen around the table for Carolyn's position and her work on the land bank. That is so critical in terms of the jobs, particularly for our young folks. Actually, at the job center these days, if you got a chance to go down there, they have incorporated a new office that focuses on teenage job seekers. So there's an attempt to outreach to the youth. That really speaks to, I think, a greater need, and that is making sure that all of our youth, as they leave high school, don't have that gap. You know what I'm talking about? When they leave school, and they don't immediately go to a Sinclair, they don't immediately have a trade they can go to, where they don't engage. And they may engage 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 years later, but they also may get into trouble in the meantime. So one of the things we'd like to consider after Carolyn is elected county commissioner is what do we do to make sure that across the county, all young folks graduating from high school have a plan. I mean, that's, for anything, you start with a plan in terms of what you want to go. And the last thing I'd really like to bring forward, I'm circling back to something I think we talked about 3 days ago, but we were talking about the food deserts. I don't know if everybody is aware, but the Montgomery County Board of Commissioners is sponsoring the 8th Annual Montgomery County Food Summit this coming Wednesday, November the 14th at the Salvation Army Dayton Croc Center. They're gonna have a whole list of people headed up by Judy Dodge, who's the commissioner heading this initiative. And they're gonna be talking about much of what we talked about here today. They're gonna be looking at food and health, including innovative ways to connect people to healthy food, food inequity. When we talk about food deserts, we're talking about inequity. So that's on the agenda as well, poverty and social determinants of health and economic development and the food system. So if you're truly interested in that, see me after the meeting. I'll give you the information. You probably want to go and be part of this discussion and let your thoughts be known. Thank you so much. The group, the name of it's the 8th Annual Montgomery County Food Summit. Come see me otherwise. November 14th.
Okay, real quick, we're about out of time. Go ahead, bro.
One final thing, and I guess this again to all the candidates, whether you're the actual candidate or the representative of the candidate, I'd like to know what's your opinion on minority-based businesses and enterprises. I think that the promotion of black rappers and black athletes is a thing of the past. I think that we need not just to have plumbers, but we need to have entrepreneurs that own plumber businesses, okay? We need to be in a situation to where the West Side is able to take care of itself because it has a philosophy of employing its own people. But at the same time, we need to be able to have contracts with county government, with state government, and with the foundations and corporations that y'all sit on the boards of to say that, hey, we need to hire and promote the contracts with black, and I'm not gonna say minorities, I'm gonna say black people in Dayton.
What you're talking about are built into the county contracts.
But those are called minority contracts, which a lot of them go to white females and not to black.
Well, they've been
contracts.
carving out, though, female-owned businesses from the minority ones. We're working on that right now. I just finished one up doing that.
Real fast.
So the basic answer is this is a country that was built in many ways by entrepreneurs, by people out there taking a chance, taking a risk to build something different. If we're gonna change as a country, we need to share our economic wealth and our vitality by making sure that happens across our communities. Everybody gets a crack at it. So whether it's through minority or black-focused contract set-asides or things of that nature, Carolyn supports that. She wants to see everybody in our community prosper as we go forward and would be willing to talk to anybody about their ideas in terms of how to make that happen more effectively than it is now.
You wanna say something?
As juvenile court judge, I can foster and facilitate youth working for entrepreneurs. I agree with you, that's the key to success. If you're asking me what I believe personally, yes, I believe more contracts and more business should go to black business owners and workers.
We have Ms. Roundtree behind you.
Oh.
What issue 8 does is stop the records. It stops possession from being on your record. With that, you can get into the cannabis industry. That is one way that they are keeping African Americans out of the cannabis industry. With the records, you cannot participate in this industry. And at this point, we're going to jail for the most, but it is young, non-black people who are now in this business, who are making millions of dollars in this business, and we are absolutely locked out. I sit on the Ohio Pharmaceutical Board as a patient advocate. At times, I am the only African American in the room. At times, I'm the only female in the room. So what we need to do is stop them from getting records so that they can go to school and go to college, so that they can get into a new industry, so that they can become an entrepreneur. I myself left Ohio and went to Michigan. I went to Grassroots Cannabis University. I studied cultivation, extraction, and culinary, which means I make my own products. I want to bring my products here to the city of Dayton. I want to make sure that every patient has access to everything that I make. And I would love, I developed my own strain. And a strain is simply You have pink roses, and people have heard of maybe like OG Kush or Purple Haze. I have one called Gem City Greenery, but I cannot release it until Ohio gets its program together. My products do very well in Michigan. I can't bring them here, but I would like to bring them here. I can't have a manufacturing division because I can't hire certain people, and I want to hire local people to produce my products, to grow my product, extract it, make my product, sell my product. I want them to go to school for marketing. I want them to go to school for, this is a business. This is not trapping anymore. This is a business. So we need business people, and we need to make sure that they can participate in a business environment.
You're trying to get all of us high.
Come on now.
Okay, y'all, we about out of time, but what I wanna do, before we go, I just wanna ask everybody one last question. We all see what's going on in Washington with the Trump administration. And so I just wanna get everybody's opinion on, are you willing to stand against the racism that we see coming out of Washington today? And I think that's important for every public servant, regardless of what office you take. I think it's important for everybody to be clear about that issue. And so I just want to go down the line. Yes or no? Yes or no?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Judge Parker?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yes, I would just note that part of our platform is that we would like Ohio to be a sanctuary state, and we'll have a policy of non-cooperation with ICE as far as deportations. We also, I just want to make sure as governor that Ohioans have their needs met no matter what's going on at the federal level, and whatever the Trump administration is doing, we are going to evaluate and make our decisions based on what is good for the people of Ohio with an eye on diversity and social justice.
Yes, we not only have to stop it from that realm, but locally as well. We need to attack it in all different ways.
Yes, sir.
Racism has zero place in my courts, whether it be race, nationality, any discrimination at all is not allowed in my court. It never has been, and it never will be.
Carolyn Rice believes in core American values. One of those values is that everybody is judged on who they are. She is going to always push back on anything that involves racism to her dying day.
Yes, that's why I'm running. I would never have thought I'd be running until 2016 happened. It's outrageous and it has to be stopped.
On behalf of Carl Keith, the short answer is yes. I know this because he hired me. You know, he could have hired anybody to be his representative on the Board of Revision. But it's a political appointment. He gave that to me. He gave me an opportunity. So I know that he stands for equal opportunity for everyone because he's been doing it for years.
Absolutely.
So give the candidates a hand, y'all. I want to thank everybody for coming out. It's been a long day.